The blame game is out of control, as both career Democrats as well as their incredibly well-paid strategists try to absolve themselves from any responsibility for Kamala Harris's loss.
Please.
We're talking trans youth sports and this box that Republicans keep putting Democrats in. And as sensitive as Democrats want to be, even the LGBTQ plus community is not fully in agreement on this. At some point, and I'm not saying they should, but my question is, do Democrats do the cost-benefit analysis and say the overwhelming majority of parents are not okay with this? We may have to make a hard decision. We may have to say something that we're anxious about, because right now they're not saying they're for it, they're just avoiding it. And a lot of parents are saying what they want.
Yeah, I think my first reaction is, before we give up an incredibly vulnerable, truly 1 in 3 suicide rate level vulnerable population, I would like to see a better attempt to defend them in the context of proportion, of the truth.
No, I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do, it makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling.
I have said this on the air, and every time I've said it, people said, oh, you're just saying that because you're a white conservative. No, I'm just saying it because every Democrat that we have ever sat down with dinner with over the past 5 years who have kids that go to colleges say their kids are afraid to speak in class because they'll be canceled.
The Democratic Party did everything it possibly could to pretend that pro-Palestinian protests weren't happening and trans people don't exist. And despite this total lack of willingness to listen to progressive voices who were very clear about what they wanted and what they cared about, the party and its mechanisms are somehow still blaming those very people for causing Kamala Harris to lose.
Well, as you know, your statement was met with some sharp reaction as well. This is what Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi had to say. Take a look. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Bernie Sanders has not won. Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families.
Senator, how do you respond to Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy's a friend of mine, and we've worked together on many issues. But here is the reality. I have to say to Nancy, in the Senate in the last 2 years, we have not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour. In America today, we have not brought, in the Senate, we have not brought to the floor the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're not talking about defined benefit pension plans so that our elderly can retire with security. We're not talking about lifting the cap on Social Security so that we can extend the solvency of Social Security and raise benefits. Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Some in your party have blamed voters' perceptions that Democrats lean too far into cultural war issues, transgender issues as part of it. Is this helpful? How should your party be responding to those kinds of GOP attacks from here on out?
Anyone?
So a couple things. First, I want to echo what Chair Jayapal said, that this is a moment for soul searching, and there should be humility across the Democratic Party, regardless of where you fall ideologically, regardless of what your priors are. I think we should take a beat. Votes are still being counted. There's plenty of time for us to dive into the data to really understand what fully happened and what role different issues played in this campaign. Let's be clear. The party that was focused on culture wars, the party that was focused on trans people, was the Republican Party. It was Donald Trump. It was the $100 million, $200 million that they spent on television ads. But I want to be clear, I do not believe, from what I've seen in Delaware, that voters in my state were responding to those attacks. Delaware is in the Philadelphia media market, so we were seeing those ads that Donald Trump clearly prioritized and focused in with regard to the culture wars. What I was hearing from voters across the state of Delaware, my district is urban, suburban, and rural. It looks like America. And what I was hearing was not the ads that Donald Trump was putting on the air. What I was hearing from folks is the need to build an economy that works for everyone. What I was hearing was that the American dream is increasingly unaffordable and inaccessible. What I was hearing was that we need to guarantee affordable health care, housing, and child care for every person in this state and in this country. That's what I was hearing. That's what I was campaigning on. I didn't run on my identity, but my identity was not a secret. And in a state where 2/3 of the voters are in the Philadelphia media market, with a trans candidate on the ballot statewide, that candidate not only performed on par with other Democrats, but had the highest percentage of any Democrat running for major statewide office in Delaware this cycle. And so I think what we have to all recognize here is that when a politician tries to take an issue that impacts a handful of people in a handful of states and turn it into the most important issue in an election, everyone has to ask why. And the answer to that question is that Donald Trump was trying to divide and distract from the fact that he has absolutely no policy solutions for the issues that are actually keeping voters up at night, the issues that I was hearing about on the campaign trail. And I think we have to be crystal clear as we move forward that we are going to call out the hypocrisy of Donald Trump, of disingenuously claiming that he is a fighter for working people when his agenda is pro-higher cost and pro-inflation. That's what we will get with his agenda in this administration. And that's why I think all of us are united in serving as that check on his administration and continuing to point out to people that he is not working on behalf of the diverse working class in this country.
And it's not just the GOP that we have to worry about right now. There was a bill introduced to allow the Treasury Secretary to unilaterally revoke the tax-exempt status of any nonprofit group that person deemed to be terrorist supporting. Now, nothing would be safe. It's a wild world we'd be entering into, but specifically imagine what effect this would have on organizations aiding the Palestinian people or Planned Parenthood or really any charity or group working to help marginalized people. And the issue is that 52 Democrats voted to pass the bill, showing just how dangerously far to the right the party has moved on some issues. And while I don't want to see any Democrats' names on the list of those voting for it, I want to focus for just a sec on a few. Colin Allred, Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is entering into the Senate. Colin Allred wanted to, and this is what leadership looks like to them. Oh, and by the way, Henry Cuellar is on there. We're still stuck with him in Texas. The Democratic Party's fear of alienating centrists, corporate backers, and the mainstream media has led to a complete reluctance to take anything like a bold stance on virtually any issue. And it's been clear for years that progressives are viewed as pariahs by the party, but it is the progressive candidates, by the way, who won despite Harris losing. And if the Democrats are going to learn anything from this car crash election, they need to start listening to the people who managed to win despite their party. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.